Welcome, everybody, to this event, which brings together people who have been in education and those involved in empowering others to learn, in an event that marks the United Nations Day of International Education. The Good Mind, Nurturing Nature is a webinar series marking the reciprocal relationship of the good of people and the collective. And this nurturing nurtures the very nature of that essence of the great divine called Aura Mazda, which is present and accepted as being present in each creation. While the Zoroastrian faith includes many timeless, time-tested messages that inspire happiness and harmony in all aspects of life, we acknowledge that the good of all at the collective level and at the individual level is also appreciated in all faiths and beliefs in the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, in science, in good governance, in good, well-organized entrepreneurship, and every aspect of life and society. Our first speaker today is Dr. Coomi Vevaina. Our second is Dr. Shernaz Cama, and we will conclude with Jerou Rammohan. Coomi Vevaina will speak on who is a global citizen and why the moment demands one now. So let's look at who Coomi is. Coomi is a thought leader, a transformative educator, an author and editor in many peer-reviewed and prestigious national and international journals. She's a creator of transformative pedagogy, which has made teaching learning relevant and joyful in both urban and rural India. She's also the curator and facilitator of innovative programs in education, literature, personal development, and storytelling. In addition, she's a jury member on selection panels, a member on advisory boards, and the founder-director of the annual online and offline International Global Tipping Point Summits for educational leaders and policymakers, teachers and students, and parents. As an internationally acclaimed TED speaker, she has given 3 TED Talks and is also an award-winning educator and literary critic. So today we welcome Coomi and acknowledge that the recording will be available on Zoroastrians.net, the treasure trove of knowledge. We thank Mr. Yazdi Tantra for supporting this whole series. Over to you, Coomi.
Thank you so much, Karishma. It's an honor to speak on this forum, and welcome to everyone. I usually like to make my presentations interactive, so if you'd be kind enough to jump in and say a few words, that would be wonderful. So what I'm going to try and do in the next 20 minutes is try and give you my perspective on who a global citizen is and why the moment demands a global citizen now. And of course, tie it up with Zoroastrian philosophy and thinking. So can you see my screen? Can everyone see my screen? And I'll now make it into full screen. Is it visible? Yes, is it visible? Can you hear me? Okay, right. So we all talk about a global citizen, whether it is in education or it is in policy making or it is in the government. Who is a global citizen? Can you just come up with a few adjectives? Who is a global citizen according to you? It can be anyone. Please. When these 2 words are uttered, global citizen, what comes to mind?
Responsibility.
Excellent. Responsibility, yes. Anything else? Responsibility,
open-mindedness, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Shernaz. Open-mindedness, very, very important. We don't go by the meta-narratives or the master narratives without examining them. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Respect for different cultures.
Yes, of course. Very, very important. Respect for different cultures. And of course, at the same time, someone who's committed to the 5 Ps, to people, to the planet, peace, prosperity, and genuine partnerships. The 5 Ps according to the UN. Today, we endlessly talk about social justice, sustainability, inclusivity, prosperity for all, non-violent conflict resolutions, and genuine partnerships. But do we see that in our current world? Unfortunately, though there is a dire need for all of this, we don't see it happening. Why? Let's go a little deeper into it. Milton, in the Areopagitica, very powerfully said, untried virtue is no virtue at all. So though we may have espoused all of this, being committed to people and being ethical and empathetic, can we ourselves act in accordance with what we have espoused and make the right choices in the face of temptation? Or are we going to then try and make excuses and justify our thinking, which may not be ethical? As you know, all of you know, ethics is the basis of Zoroastrianism. And I think it is one thing which can really save the world today. But though we keep on saying, oh, it should be like this, we should be open-minded, are we really open-minded in all ways or in some ways? Can we afford to be open-minded only in some ways? Well, not really. Times have changed dramatically. And we need courage to examine our own thinking, our own biases, and to work on ourselves. As a very popular song of the 70s says, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. It all has to begin with me. We can't change the world without changing ourselves. And I think this is something we need to bear in mind at all times. So examining ourselves, examining our good thing, do we really operate from a good mind? It's absolutely crucial. Today, we say that education has 3 Cs, according to me. C for consciousness change, content mastery in learner-centric ways, and developing competencies, both academic and personal. I will dwell a little bit on each of them. To me, the most important is consciousness change. With our individualistic, highly competitive consciousness, we can't really develop global citizens. We can't think like global citizens. So if our mentality is me and mine alone, or my tribe and me alone, things will unfortunately not change. We know that the ancient Greeks were very careful when they called a person a citizen. A person who merely thinks of himself and is selfish, they call that person an idiot. The second category, me and mine alone, me and my tribe, my people, those who speak the same language, they call such people tribesmen. And the third category, the citizen, according to the ancient Greeks, was one who definitely thought about himself and his people, but of the world at large. So, consciousness change, according to me, is the most crucial aspect of change. Because with an individualistic mindset, we cannot create something which requires unity mindset, unity consciousness. The second is content mastery in learner-centric ways. Today, there is so much of emphasis on information, but we can get information at the click of a button with AI around. Does that mean we do not need to master the content? No, we definitely need content mastery. I'll give you a very small example, a personal example here. I was conducting a workshop on poetry recently, and I found someone come up with an absolutely wild, way out interpretation of a poem, which was clearly wrong. I don't like to say that about literature because literature is an art form and you're entitled to your own interpretations. But this seemed completely way out. And I was talking about it, and someone said, "Why don't you check out with ChatGPT?" And I did. And the person had taken it directly from there. Now, that person had no content mastery. So he or she just accepted it without questioning. I wrote to ChatGPT and said, "I think you misunderstood this poem, blah, blah, blah." And ChatGPT wrote back and said, "Oh my God, thank you. Thank you for correcting me." So content mastery cannot be compromised. But we need to operate in learner-centric ways. Times have changed dramatically. Our mobile phones are not the mobile phones we used when we first bought our Nokia. Things have changed. We are using smart mobile phones. We don't have to ask learners to enter through our door. We can try and be more empathetic and enter through their door and teach in learner-centric ways. And of course, the third C, competencies. We need academic competencies and we also need personal competencies. I won't get into the details, but Dell Company, Google have done extensive research in the importance of personal competencies. Nobody has ever taught us how to manage our anger, fear, jealousy, hatred, and all the other emotions. So, an unexamined life is causing problems in our day-to-day interaction. And now, unfortunately, when people are upset, instead of talking to a friend, a buddy, they talk to a chat box, which I think is really sad. For global citizenship education to succeed, we need to replace individualistic consciousness with expanded unity consciousness using, in my opinion, I humbly propose technopoiesis, which is not a pedagogy, but a process that I created in 2013 and which has succeeded in urban as well as rural India, as well as other countries in the world. We need to nurture what I call sourceful intelligence through education. What is sourceful intelligence? Sourceful intelligence is the dual capacity that we human beings have to understand and experience both our uniqueness as well as our oneness simultaneously. Of course, we are unique. Thank God we are unique. But uniqueness doesn't mean being special. Uniqueness means as unique as our thumbprint. We are all different. We are all unique. But at the same time, at the basis of it, there is oneness. So, if we are talking about uniqueness, I've just illustrated this with it's the usual Jungian concept. The conscious mind and the personal consciousness make us aware of our uniqueness. And the collective consciousness, unconscious, and the deep self make us aware of our oneness. And we have the capacity to understand and experience both our uniqueness and our oneness simultaneously. The entire thrust of education, according to me, should be to transition learners from a self versus other consciousness. Each and every one at this program today is special in his or her own way. We don't have to be locked in a competitive mode. Self versus other. We need as much competition, as much of salt and food, nothing more. We can transition learners from a self versus other to a self and other, genuinely collaborative, But even here, the other remains the other, to finally a stage where all is self. All is self, unity consciousness. Does this seem very idealistic? No, not at all. A very simple thinking process can help us achieve this. This I call technopoiesis. Technology is something that makes human life easier. That's the etymology of the word. And poiesis is poetry, myths, and the art. So we bring the two together. It has only 5 stages, and a learner needs to be taught using this kind of thinking on the part of the teacher, on the part of the facilitator, to ensure that this transition from a self versus other to a self and other to an all is self happens in every classroom. The first 2 stages marked in orange are relate and stimulate. Relate. Why should I be learning this unit? What is important? How does it connect with my life? Is it even relevant to me? Again, I'll give you a very quick example here. I was called by an IB school principal and asked to do a lecture on Shakespeare. And she said, you must come and work with my students because my students are going to face an exam in 2 months and they absolutely dislike Shakespeare. And that's a very wrong thing to say to me. So I jumped into it and I created a fun presentation called Boy, That Cool Dude Shakespeare Still Rocks. And what I did was I just made them see the relevance of Shakespeare. I told them that, are you for dictatorship? They said, no, 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 of course we are not. I said, well, that's exactly, or religious fanaticism. No, no, no. Well, then hath not a Jew eyes, hath not a Jew at senses, affections, passions. And I went on like that. I won't develop this at great length, but it was fun. And then I told them, give me an emotion and I'll give you Shakespeare. And we had so much fun. At the end of it, the principal phones me after a week and says, ma'am, what have you done? Because now my students are wanting to learn 2 Shakespeare plays in 2 months rather than 1. What did I do? Nothing big. I just made them feel the excitement and the relevance of Shakespeare today. Shakespeare as our contemporary. The next step, so relate. This is not a set induction. This is working thematically. That's the first step, relate. Stimulate. Stimulate is when we take into consideration learners with different capacities and we make our teaching genuinely inclusive and question-based, Socratic in essence. And we bring in all our AI and aids and everything into it at this stage. So this really nurtures a self versus other consciousness. The next 2, collaborate and act, nurture the self and other consciousness, where we bring them together in groups and give them group assignments, or even bring in teachers who teach other subjects, make it truly interdisciplinary. That is what the NEP is asking for, but most teachers find this very difficult to do. It's difficult if you try and do it on your own, but not if you work collaboratively. The next stage is act. This is very, very important because if knowledge has to be transferred to life, then this stage is important. How does this change me, my thinking, and what can I really do? This is not activity. Act is not activity. It is action. And the final stage is unify. At this stage, we're taking them to the all is self-consciousness, and we're making the students, all the learners, realize the oneness and how it is shared commonly by maybe all living things. Again, there is no time here to give any examples, but these are the 5 steps, and this is all that we do when we teach technopoiesis. And as I said at the beginning, it's turned out to be very, very interesting for both the teachers and the students. But it requires, as a poet, B.P. Nicol said, that you put your mind in a new headspace. So you have to be willing to leave your comfort zone of doing your talk teaching or just bringing in a few aids or bringing in a little bit of whiteboard. This requires a very dramatic shift in your thinking. And once you make that shift, then learning becomes fun for both the teachers as well as the students. The last part is, how does this type of education reflect what Zoroastrianism advocates? This way of teaching learning will nurture the good mind of future ready global citizens who will be equipped with a change in consciousness to put into action. Again, as I said, action is all important. The basic tenets of Zoroastrianism: good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Humata Hukta and Huvarashta. Students who will demonstrate service orientation in the true spirit of Ubuntu. If you win, then I win. It's not me versus you. Celebrate and protect nature in its rich diversity. That's when sustainability is going to become a reality. And Zoroastrianism has always talked about this. It's a very, very ecological religion. Act in ethical ways by following Asha, truth, order, righteousness at all times. I think ethics is crucial, and it's the essence of Zoroastrianism. Live life with faith and joy, thanking our Ramazda for his bounty, and ever ready to combat evil Ahriman fearlessly in his myriad guises, but fearlessly with still an ethical, empathetic mindset, and help achieve the sustainable goals that United Nations has come up with. There's nothing wrong with the goals. The goals are not idealistic, but it is only a change in consciousness which will help us actualize these goals. And with that, I say thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Over to you, Karishma. Over to you.
Thank you, Coomi. Having listened to Coomi and formulated your questions, always remember that you will be invited to share in the discussion section for up to 3 minutes your own perspective on education, because a paper will be created from this dialogue today and shared with the United Nations. But of course, first we put on Zoroastrians.net, which has supported this series.
Thank you very much.
Our second speaker is Dr. Shernaz Cama, whose theme is Learning to Live, Ancient Wisdom for Today. Professor Shernaz Cama has taught at the Delhi University for several decades, but to me, she is primarily the founder-director of Parzor Foundation. She continues teaching at the academic program she has founded, the TIS Parzor Program on Culture and Civilization, a Zoroastrian perspective. She is an advisor, the Fulbright Educational Program, trustee of the Temple of Understanding and honorary research fellow, the University of Exeter, besides being on the board of the governors of the Indian Spinal Injury Center in New Delhi. In 1999, Professor Cama was invited by UNESCO to initiate a project on the preservation and promotion of Parsi Zoroastrian culture and heritage. As honorary director of Parzor Foundation, she has guided and continues to guide researchers in Parsi Zoroastrian culture and demography. Professor Cama has produced movies, been the curator of the Everlasting Flame International Program, among other exhibitions. Her publications are very diverse and include the seminal Threads of Continuity. Professor Cama has won several prestigious international awards from UNESCO and the Zoroastrian associations across the world for her work on Zoroastrianism. And she's also a recipient of the Sarojini Naidu International Award for Education. Over to you, Shernaz, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Karishma. Thank you, Yazdi. And thank you, everybody who is here this evening or morning, wherever you are. Basically, I don't have a slide presentation. I'm just going to be speaking from the heart. I am talking about ancient wisdom for today, learning to live. The Sustainable Development Goals It seems only yesterday that Dr. Sanaya Nariman and I were invited to discuss these in Delhi with the UN. And we were talking on behalf of the minority of the Parsi Zoroastrians of India. They started around September. They were planned around September 2015 as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And it seems just yesterday, and actually we are almost at 2030, and that's something which we all need to think about. There was a global commitment to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure peace and prosperity. Uh, it's the actual Sustainable Development Goals started in 1st of January 2016. There was idealism, and yet there was a lot of practicality as well. We all know that there are 17 interconnected sustainable global goals, and the primary idea is to get rid of inequality and environmental degradation. By the time 2015 had come around, we had seen how damaging the environmental problems had begun. And there's one other phrase which I want to remind people of in the SDGs, and that was leave no one behind. Unfortunately, as we all know, there are far too many people left behind. And as a teacher, what worries me the most is that it is parents who are actually forcing young people to be more and more competitive, to leave others behind as they race ahead. And this is something which has grown over the many decades that I have taught and has reached completely impossible standards today for the young. And that is why they are cracking up with mental breakdowns, they are going into depression, and they're just withdrawing into their phones where they can escape from the reality of the world around them. Oh, the whole point is that the SDGs gave a blueprint for a better future and for a more sustainable future, balancing socio-economic as well as environmental needs. Uh, it has been a part of the educational program at most colleges and schools across the world. But as I said, are we allowing young people to follow and live by these goals? The SDGs speak today about a blueprint for the 21st century. I'd like to remind the audience that many, many millennia ago, a, a Bronze Age prophet, Zarathustra, almost forgotten to history, gave a blueprint for life and creation, which the SDGs actually are now almost repeating verbatim. Mary Boyce tells us that Zoroastrianism is the oldest of the world's revealed religions, and it has probably had more influence on mankind, directly and indirectly, than any other single faith. It is this faith that I am, and this culture that I am discussing today. The SDGs call for progressing together, I quote, and this call to action was the key message of Zoroaster because Zoroastrianism and the prophet Zarathustra placed a great responsibility on man, and in his actions lie his salvation. The call to action stresses that mere meditation is insufficient. You cannot rely on a savior to rescue you. You cannot believe in karma, which means many, many cycles of rebirth. The call to action is for every Zoroastrian and every person in the world, as the SDGs say, to act correctly. We tie the holy thread which we wear around us and we untie and retie it every day. We tie it at the word Shothenanam. Shothenanam means to act or action. For the Zoroastrian, a saint is not one who not a person who lives away in a mountaintop and seeks personal salvation. For Zoroastrianism, a saint is one who sacrifices himself for others. And that is why the path to God and the path to any good sense does not lie away from, but lies through the joys and trials of humankind. The problem today, as I see it, is the iniquity which has completely gone out of hand. The iniquity of a few billionaires whom we just saw recently, controlling everything from the smallest chip to the largest infrastructure developments. It is tragically understood by all of us, and yet we never speak about it, that the armament industry, or what we call the war machine, needs blood, needs hatred, and battlefields with young people killed to make the millions for the manufacturers who unfortunately are many of these billionaires. While every prophet has preached love, why has no culture followed these teachings? Two world wars in the 20th century. It's less than 100 years since the First World War, since the Second World War. Two world wars and millions gassed to death in the concentration camps led to the creation of the United Nations and a determination, and I'm quoting from the UNESCO preamble of 1945, quote, "Since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed." So, how are these defenses of peace constructed in a Zoroastrian or through Zoroastrian culture? As Coomi said, unlike other thinkers, Zarathustra sees God as good and wise and just. But he also realizes a fundamental different dimension or mentality, Angre or Ariman, a destructive mentality. Because of this realization of two mentalities in Zarathustra's vision, he introduces man for the first time in history to the concepts of choice and free will. Man must learn to exercise choice, and that's what we really need today, between the forces of the truth and the forces of that which is false, between good and evil, put it very simply. It is this responsibility that Zoroastrianism places on man. Man and woman are not victims of fate, but through their actions, creators of their own destiny. Just as the SDGs speak of health and well being, in Zoroastrianism, the Yazata Horvatat stands for health. And it's not just physical health, it's also mental health. The idea of mental health is something which we are realizing only now. Zarathustra understood this dilemma so many millennia ago. What are the Amesha Spenta? They are the holy immortals, but they symbolize harmony because they are for us both carers and guardians of creation as well as abstract ideas. And that is why this coming together of the mind and the body, which we are realizing more and more as we understand psychology and as we understand medicine, was something which the prophet Zarathustra understood, that harmony is the ultimate goal of all our lives. The duties enjoined in Zoroastrianism to protect the environment link with absolutely equal to the 6th, 7th, 13th, 14th, and 15th SDGs. While these set rules for the care of water, land, clean energy, climate action, and justice, Zoroastrians have from millennia been enjoined to nurture trees and plants, to walk gently on this earth, to enrich the soil, and to keep the waters pure. He who sows corn sows righteousness, says one of our texts, the Vendidat. The 8th SDG of decent work, the 16th which speaks of peace and justice, and the 17th which requires every nation and every society to work in partnership, reflect a very ancient tradition. The first prayer a child learns in our faith is a small mantra called the Hashem Vahu, and it states very simply, truth is the highest good and righteousness the source of all happiness. Basically, it means that man serves God by serving his fellow beings. Cruelty to anything, even the earth, even stamping hard on the earth, is a vice. consideration is all important. A word is sacred and once given is not to be broken. But while we have this sense of justice and duty and courage, joy and laughter are also very, very important. The enjoyment of this beautiful spenta creation, which has been given to us, is very vital. The basic point is that Zoroastrianism teaches us that if we care for the Creator, we have to care for creation. If we love God, we have to love our fellow men and women. It is only through service that we can worship the Lord. Love and self sacrifice are closely interlinked, but so is a care and compassion for those who are less well off than us. The Yathaveryo prayer, which is another mantra which a child learns, can be summed up in this simple statement: happiness comes to him who gives happiness unto others. So, if we are God's humkars or co workers in the battle against doubt, negativity, hate, cruelty, the Arimanic spirit, we have to protect the positive. Just as all of us teachers have taught our students the right choice, hopefully, in our teaching of literature or teaching of anything, any subject, uh, Zoroaster also gives to man a he asks Aura Mazda to teach him so that he can teach man the following. And I'm quoting from his own words in the Anuvaiti Gatha. Whatever words and deeds are noblest, best, teach me, O Mazda, make my life express, through love of fellow man, through search for truth, the yearnings and the prayers of my heart. Renew Aura through the strength to serve my life and make it as thou wishest, true. He who brings to others light himself gets light. That's a quote from the Yashna 43.9. And basically, the 17th SDG of working in partnership to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals are almost repeats. They reflect the Zoroastrian virtues which I have spoken about. Now, all religions teach man to lead a good life. We see imperfection all around us, but every religion says that we should cure the imperfections within ourselves. Zoroastrianism clearly tells us it is not just imperfections within ourselves. It is not a self-centered improvement. It is an improvement of all around. And as Coomi said, Humakta Hukta Hurvarashta, good thoughts, good words, good deeds. The deeds being the most important are the basic three tenets of this religion. Today, I speak to both young and old when I think and speak of education. There is so much uncertainty in the world today. There is so much hopelessness, even despair, especially among young people. And we have been so negative towards young people. We have said that's the generation Z, they are Z, they're lazy, they're this and that. But actually, I see in them, particularly in the last 2 months, them being true soldiers of truth. They are facing bullets, they are facing pepper spray, they are facing tear gas in the streets that they once believed were home. For them, we have to stand up. We of the parent and grandparent generation have to stand up and repeat an ancient message. It is a universal message of protecting our fragile blue planet. Ecology, from the Greek oikos, meaning home, is that branch of biology which we all need to stress today. The telescope and the microscope in the so-called Enlightenment, which was a wonderful period, but it did make us see things partially. This fragmentation ignored, with science and technology, ignored the holistic approach of religion and philosophy. Please let us all remember that science is not the only method of comprehension of this world. It is just a route map of the cosmos. There are other route maps. We have to take into account spiritual dimensions. We have to remember traditional wisdom. When we fragment our minds, our personalities also fragment. And ultimately, as we have seen, we are fragmenting our one world. So the SDGs highlight interdependence and the unity of life. This is one temenos, one sacred space which we are sharing. Those who are leading us to this understanding may be called by many names: Christ, Muhammad, Krishna, Zarathustra. But their message to humankind is always been one: to protect this earth and to treasure it and to thank whichever power created us for this beautiful earth. I think this is very, very important because our generation had a certain humility. I remember the first time in a planetarium as a child, just looking at that huge cosmos above in the darkness of the planetarium and striving to see that tiny little speck which we call our earth. Today we believe that rare earth, diamonds, and of course oil are the most important possessions. With this greed for power, be it political power or be it financial power, we have inverted the world as it should, as from what it should be to what it is today. There is so much competition, so much greed, so much grasping. I think that we grew up in a slightly more, I would say, in a space where we shared and we cared. This was the teaching which we saw from those who lived around us, from our grandparents. We grew up, fortunately, in a community, in a larger family setting, and we understood that we were a very small part of the community, and of course at a larger scale we were a very tiny speck in the infinity of this world, let alone this great universe. Facing this truth and reiterating this truth has been one of the important aspects of the SDGs and of any education. When harmony and common sense and humility return to us and to our position on this earth, when we don't tell our children, you can have it all and you can have it day before yesterday, perhaps it will bring peace to our lives and to our earth. We have to respect, as Zoroastrianism does, each human, obviously, but every animal, every insect, every plant, every water, every drop of water. We must treat water with care. You never left a tap on when you were brushing your teeth. Today we have to tell that to our grandchildren. We grew up somehow knowing that that was not what you did. And please remember, we have to respect every mineral, not treat it as a source for more power. I'm talking about both types of power, literal power and of course financial power. Only with this harmony and only with this humility will we put aside the terrible greed that has overcome man. Let us remember the words of the beautiful hymn to earth in Zoroastrianism, the Zamyadiyasht. I quote, numerous and good, numerous and beautiful, numerous and flourishing, numerous and splendid are the works that Ahura Mazda has made through his glory. Let us remember this and let us be grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Shernaz. We will be inviting each of you to share your own perspectives. At the end of today's talks, please take up to 3 minutes, share your thoughts on education so that when a paper is created from today's webinar, your thoughts reach the United Nations, your thoughts reach other journals around the world. So as the good mind nurturing nature, this reciprocal relationship brings your thoughts together. Let's listen to our final speaker, Jerou Rammohan. who works in holistic education, and that's her title, Holistic Education, the Power of the Youth in Co-Creating Education. Jerou is an alternative medical practitioner, an educator, an entrepreneur, a life coach, and has also been a beauty therapist, an athlete, and a researcher. With a graduate in nursing, she served the poorest of the poor to the richest honorarily for the good of health and holistic development, having given up a medical seat out of choice because the way it was being taught did not resonate with her values. As learning and development mentor and co-founder of Ultimate Achievements Academy, Jerou catalyzes the growth and learning of individuals. She has taught the Duke of Edinburgh Award classes and high school, been a life and general insurance agent and inspector, and also enjoys art, music, and painting, especially nature. Jerou has designed and built her own house with her own and her husband's savings and strives to make the impossible possible, though it took her 7 long years to complete. She believes in opportunity and education for all and in helping people's vision come true. Over to you, Mummy.
Good evening, all. I'm here to talk about the youth mainly today. But how does youth start? It starts with a child. Child is the father of the nation, they say. Child is the father of man. Child is the father of the world. So educate your child right from the start, for which the parent has to take the trouble of educating the child by his or her own example. They have to be the life models for the children. They have to show the children how to live their life, how to manage themselves, how to honor and respect people, how to honor and respect all the elements of nature. Because without nature, there can't be a man or a human being. They should know how to respect the sun, the moon, the land, the water, the air, and all the plantations, everything around them, all the human beings they should respect. There is nobody bigger or smaller. There is nobody greater or lesser. We are all made equal as human beings. The characteristics of the human beings will differ upon the nature of the person, according to the deeds of the person in various lives. We carry over from one life to the other. Though there are people in Zoroastrianism who do not believe that there is a second life. But as it stands, according to the Sanatan Dharma, we do live every life to improve ourselves, to become better and better human beings, to become more and more spiritual till we reach the stage of nirvana. When a child is expected, the mother should have very clean, good thoughts, speak good words, and do good deeds as much as possible so that the child is influenced in her belly. When the child is born, the mother should nurture the child, not leave the child to an ayah or a nanny or somebody, unless there is a dire need to do that. And even after that, the mother should spend as much time as possible with the child and along with her husband, so that the impressions on the child will fall right from birth. with a loving and kind and giving atmosphere, environment, a child learns a lot. A child should not be taught discipline, should be made to live a disciplinary life as per the parents' own example. They are the real models for the child. And if they don't do that, the child will grow up anyhow with the external influences, if there are bad influences. When the child is small, the child should be taught, apart from scholastic knowledge, all the play, all the various things by playing, all the talks the parents want to give the child through play and acting and stories, which are very nice and enjoyable for the child. But every story has some meaning behind it that the parent wants to inculcate in the child. When the child grows up with discipline, with honesty, with all the good qualities of the parents, loving, kindness, compassion, giving and sharing, caring for the others, putting other people's feelings above his or her own, one's own. And that is how a child grows into a young man or a young woman. We call adult,
A youth. A youth.
youth. We call them youth. Now, when the youth starts learning about the world, along with their friends, their colleagues, their teachers, and mind you, right from the childhood, a child is a teacher. The children try to teach each other, and thereby they learn a lot more. They can also learn bad things, but good things will impress them more. Now, when the child has become a youth, the youth has certain ideas, certain notions, certain hopes and wonderment of the world. They like to build a career for themselves from that age. They say, oh, my aunt is a doctor, my uncle is an engineer. I'm going to become this, I'm going to become that. But that is without responsibility. One can choose as much as one wants, but every chosen thing must have responsibility attached to it. And when a child is taught to take on that responsibility, the child grows into a real man or a woman, grows into a proper human being. Now, when the child is a youth, the child wants to take leadership. The youth wants to take leadership. So they have discussions, they have talks, they try to outdo one another, they try and grab every opportunity they can under the sun. They become creative. With respect and reverence for their principals, for their teachers, for their parents, they become good youth. And they become successful in life as well. According to Zoroastrian, our prophet, who is one of the oldest prophets in the world, taught us, think good, talk good, speak good, and do good. As Shernaz Cama said, you must do good, that is more important. than anything. But how will you do good? Firstly, you must learn to breathe. So, as children, we are taught to breathe and breathe properly. We all breathe, but we don't breathe properly. We take short breaths. We take unnecessary worries and stresses on our minds and get fast pulse or slow pulse, and things like that. So, to regulate our body, mind, and have control over ourselves, we need to do good, deep breathing through our abdomen and through our nose. Breathe out first. Always breathe out first to remove all the impurities that are inside you. Then slowly count to 4 and breathe in. With a little pause between breathe in and breathe out, take 8 counts to breathe out slowly, again through the abdomen and the nose, not through the mouth. And thereby go on increasing the counts as you get more and more used to breathing properly. Use it as an exercise first. When you walk also, walk with the breathing exercise. Walk with every 4 counts you breathe out, breathe in, and every 8 counts you breathe out. If you practice that, you get more oxygen, more energy, and you will be able to create more. You'll be able to be more alert and active. Now, where sharing and caring is concerned, when one grows up and starts deciding on a career that one chooses, the person may become an entrepreneur, may become a businessman or woman, may become a doctor or engineer or any profession they may choose. But as I said, they must choose with responsibility and care so that they can continue with it and not just drop off whenever they feel like. Even if there are losses in a business, they should try and try again, like King Bruce and the spider. Do not take failure at heart, because failure is only a stepping stone to success. Take all along with you whom you employ. As a youth, right from the start, learn how to trust others, how to care for others who work with you. Learn to share things with others and not keep everything for yourself. Learn to honor and respect each and every worker, whoever it be, even a sweeper. You must give that respect to that person as a human being and not make any distinctions between an officer and a sweeper. In an office, all are equal. Men, women, whoever there is. Everybody gets an equal right. Everybody gets their pay according to their status and their place in the office. And the person who is literally manning the office, the director or whoever it is, cares a lot about all the people working with that person. I'll give you an example. I have a very sweet sister-in-law who had a beauty parlor to start with and other beauty parlors later on, who treated all her workers at the same level. Her husband, my brother, an army officer, used to carry food in the afternoon from home for every single worker so that they get plenty to eat and nourish themselves with good food, whether it be a sweeper or it be a beautician, whoever it is. She used to treat everybody with so much love and care that nobody ever wanted to leave her. She was a very hard worker herself, and seeing her act as a role model, all her workers did the same. She maintained them right from the beginning to the end, till she gave up her salon. This is what I call leadership. A leader is the one who cares for all, who understands and tolerates all, forgives their faults, and gives them more opportunities. Opportunity just does not come like that. It comes because it is meant to come. And if you don't grab it by its forelock, it's gone. So one must know when and how to catch hold of that opportunity. In a leadership, one has to be very patient, very understanding. There can be failures. As I said, failures are only stepping stones. Youth can be very, very creative. And the younger a person, not understand. Younger the person, more creative the person can be. Today's country is in the hands of the youth. Every country, wherever you look, the prime ministers are all very young. The ministers are all young. Of course, in our country, it's an old country, so we have older people. That's a part. But in all the modern countries, youth has taken the fall. And so it should be, because the youth have got more energy, more working capacity, and better ideas, new ideas with which they can create new things, produce new things. Today, people have gone to the moon. They're going to the various other planets. And so, today's day is Day of the Youth. Anything I've forgotten?
No. Thank you very much. So as we come to the
and that brings peace and happiness to all. As I've said, if they inculcate in them all these qualities, there will be nothing but peace on earth. Caring for nature, caring for human beings, caring for animals. There'll be heaven on earth. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. What we now need to do is hear from the youth. So I'm going to call upon the first person in the discussion section who will share their perspectives. So share your perspectives, please. And as you do so, as we see each faith, we can realize that there is guidance for neurocognitive and emotional control and nurturing, entrepreneurship, technological and economic and social transformation. But for that, we need energy and its transformations, good nutrition, human rights, ecology, all these various things coming together. And that is how, if we share and learn, we might be able to bring about a betterment of this world. Over to you, Godrej. Yes.
Yes, hi, this is Burgess speaking. I want to thank the speakers for an excellent talk. I really enjoyed it. What a great way to celebrate UN Day of Education. Not everything is positive because, of course, not everything is positive in our world, but I think there was wonderful encouragement, wonderful advice given. to all those present. Just to briefly summarize and share some of my thoughts, I really liked how Professor Coomi started speaking about the importance of global citizenship and SDGs. That's incredibly important, as you know, we live in a world filled with a lot of nationalism. I think patriotism is very important, loving your country, but I think it's important to also have that global perspective and make sure that your country is not benefiting at the expense of other countries. And then the importance of Shakespeare also, warning about the dangers of authoritarianism. There's a lot of that in the world right now, and so many of Shakespeare's lessons are so timeless and will always be with us in the future. So it's really important that we encourage the youth to study Shakespeare, learn the lessons, and see how it applies to their daily lives. Then Shernaz spoke very well about the importance of living an active life in Zoroastrianism. Meditation is not sufficient. You have to address the evils in the world, the wrongs in society. I like the emphasis she had on inequity and environmental damage. Now we have to focus on solving that. So whatever solutions we can come up with, voting for policymakers and politicians who'll focus on antitrust, cracking down on monopolies, cracking down on crony capitalism. So Zoroastrianism has always taught that it's fine to make wealth as long as that wealth is being made honestly and shared with people in general. But we have tremendous amounts of inequity in the world. So we have to think about what is the right way to create wealth. And the importance of environmentalism. I love the saying that those who sow corn sow righteousness. It's very important to take care of crops, the soil. I think it'll really cultivate good values if we teach the youth about agriculture. And one of the programs that we support as a company from a CSR point of view is called FALI, Future Agriculture Leaders of India, to train the youth who come from rural backgrounds on how they can continue on with farming and create agri businesses out of it that's self-sustaining, so they can have good quality of life in the rural areas that they live in, so they don't have to feel that they have to come to cities for their work. Then I really appreciated how Jerou spoke about the importance of good role models, how Zoroastrianism emphasizes nature, and we see that with prayers like Khorshed Nyash, Mer Nyash, Ma Bokta Nyash, Ardvi Sur Nyash, talking about the elements and their importance and showing that we have to venerate and respect them, and how we're just part of nature. We shouldn't think that we are masters of nature. And the importance of values, moral science, putting others' feelings beyond one's own, the importance of yoga and breathing as well. And I really appreciated the family stories she shared about caring for workers and caring for employees in the company. So those are my reflections. Thank you for a wonderful session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Burgess. We have Reverend Margaret, Shiroi Billy Moria, and Professor Farooq Mistry who've sent in messages. Let's go Shiroi. Shiroi, would you like to share your thoughts now? Margaret. And then we'll ask Reverend Margaret and Professor Farooq Mistry.
Good day to everyone. And it was lovely to hear all the speakers. Very fascinating talk. And a lot of what all three of the speakers said resonates with me and my perspective on education, because education is is the key to bettering human lives. There is no education is what helps broaden horizons, what helps broaden perspectives, and it is that definitive key which equips people with the tools they need to succeed in life. And I can't think of a better example, just to share my personal reflection on what education means to me and from what the speakers have said. And I can't think of a better example for us to look at than the Zoroastrian community in India itself. You can see right up until the introduction of modern educational system in the mid 19th century, we were a good, flourishing community, but nowhere near as influential. Yes, we had a few great entrepreneurs and all that, but it is that pivotal moment when educate the Western form of education was introduced in India in the mid 19th century that galvanized the community, and Zoroastrians were at the forefront of taking advantage of these educational opportunities. They pursued them. They became civil servants. They became great doctors, lawyers of great repute. They brought technological advancement to their own industries and became titans of industry, great entrepreneurs. And they were also, I think, some of the first to pioneer and go to different shores in search of education, like coming to the UK. What education has done for the Zoroastrian community, it serves as an inspiration for me to pursue education as a so that I can have the tools to excellence, to excel in what I choose to do. And this is what Jaranti was also saying, that how it is important to inculcate values in the youth, and how the parents need to be equipped with the right kind of education so that they can pass it along to the future generations. And I completely agree with that. And those are my reflections. Thank you very much. And thank you to the speakers for a lovely, very fascinating session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerou. Jerou is doing his PhD at the University in London at SOAS. So thank you, Jerou, for sharing that. The next comment came in from Reverend Margaret, please. Reverend Margaret Somerville is the head of Interfaith Alignment. Reverend Margaret, and then we'll call upon Professor Farooq Mistry.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be in this space with you all and to hear your wisdom and to share in this time together. I have been an educator my entire life. I'm an interfaith minister, but in founding Interfaith Alignment, our main goal was connection between people of different faith traditions, and not trying to acknowledge in any way that we are the same, but upholding the treasured differences that we have, finding commonalities in our good thoughts and good words and good deeds. And so our program began really as an educational program so that we could be together in spaces like this with people of different faith traditions, but it became something focused on practice. So it's so interesting to hear so many of you talk about practice in these ways, because our understanding of how deeply rooted education is in connection is to be with one another and to hear about one another's practices. So what we do in Interfaith Alignment is we come together every week with people of different faith traditions and we share our practices. But in just being able to share in this space with a wonderful variety of Zoroastrian thinkers and practitioners and leaders, in my own faith tradition, I was raised Christian, although I am an interfaith minister. I first knew Zoroastrianism in terms of the three priests who came to the Christ child to offer their gifts. And I was always raised with the thinking of those as gold and frankincense and myrrh. But I have such a clear understanding now that those gifts given to the Christ child were good thoughts, good words, good deeds. And that it planted in all of us is the power of that creative spirit. As dear Mrs. Jerou has shared with us, that the power of creation is planted in all of us. And education is unlocking that creative spirit within each of us as we connect one to another. So I'm so grateful to be in this space and to continue to share with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Margaret. Professor Farooq Mistry next, please.
Thank you. I was very intrigued by the presentation of the three people, but in particular what Burgess said. And I'm going to piggyback on what Burgess said. Everybody talked about education. Education comes from the Latin educare, to draw out. And what has happened is that parents in particular are focused on getting their children prepared for a nokri, that means a job, not a career. I think this is a very important distinction, and it has been made extremely well by Farid Zakaria in his book titled In Defense of Liberal Education. And it's a short book, and I recommend people looking at it because I think what we need to move towards is liberal education as opposed to just focused education to get people a job. The world is digitally transforming at a very rapid rate. And so the technical knowledge or the skills that we impart to our students in the first 4 years of a curriculum or the first 12 years or 16 years of the K through 12 plus the 4 years of the university change. So the important thing that came through the three speakers was that we need to empower people to continue how to learn. In other words, we need to focus on generative learning. So far, the curriculum has been on rote learning and pedantic learning, both of which are necessary. But increasingly, we need to think in terms of generative learning. And I want to share my screen and share with you something that I found out on the 30th of December when I visited MIT, Maharashtra Institute of Technology in Pune. In the NEP 2020, the National Education Program 2020 in India, one of the things that is written is that the institutions of higher learning should use Vedic science. And it didn't make sense to me. It made no sense to me. Science is science. It's not Vedic science or Western science or Eastern science. But then at Maharashtra Institute of Technology, what I found is that they have built their curriculum on Vedic philosophy. That I accept. And in Vedic philosophy, there are 5 koshas that dealing with the physical body, energy body, emotional body, wisdom body, and bliss body. And this reminded me, this ties into what the first speaker talked about, when she says how you progress and make things happen. And I think it'd be very nice, Karishma, if you looked at this, Jerou, you looked at this, Vevaina, you looked at this and saw if we can come up with something equivalent from the Zoroastrian side. Why? Because Hinduism and Zoroastrianism are sister religions. And MIT has built the entire curriculum on this holistic idea of educating the total human being. And that ties in very well with what Farid Zakaria has written in his book, In Defense of Liberal Education. The second thing I want to point out and touch upon is the following. What is generative learning? And for generative learning, we are looking at career-sustaining competencies. 1, the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn through reflection on doing and the associated creation and articulation of knowledge. Because if things are changing, you're going to need new knowledge. In Zoroastrianism, we are enjoined to create knowledge. Aura Mazda is Lord of Wisdom. So that's the first thing. The second is the ability to speculate about the future and to identify gaps in state of art or state of practice in ways that may lead to innovation. One cannot innovate without being able to identify gaps that are foundational to generative learning. In Zoroastrianism, we are enjoined to say, how can each of us individually add value to move Aura Mazda's kingdom towards Frashakirti? To be able to do that, we need to be able to speculate, identify the gaps, define the gaps, etc. The third is the ability to ask questions, actively listen, reflect, and identify opportunities worthy of further investigations. Questions embody gaps in a person's knowledge, and answers may lead to generative learning. This is extremely important because you may have the gap, but as Burgess pointed out, hey, guess what? How do you define that gap? How do you go about hypothesizing as to how you bridge that gap? And he said that he has put this program together for agriculture for youth. In other words, he's understood the situation, put the resources together, asked the right questions, says, here's a program that takes it forward. The fourth is the ability to make decisions to move forward using incomplete information. Innovation involves risk. Generative learning has utility only when a decision is made to move forward. You can keep on saying, I think, and do nothing. This ties into the idea of good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. In Zoroastrianism, you can have a good thought, you speak a good word, but the big thing is to have a good deed that comes out of it. And the good deed, some people get hampered because they do not wish to take the risk. They keep talking about it. The fifth is the ability to assess and think critically. And there are two types of thinking here. Actually, there are 7 types of critical thinking. I focused on 2. One is deductive reasoning. You have lots and lots and lots of information. Then using a certain path or a pattern, you go along and you come to a conclusion. For example, you can use utility theory, you can use neonatal theory to look at the data and come out and say, this is the conclusion. And the other one is very interesting. And we practice that in Zoroastrianism, and that is intuitive speculation. And that ties to this notion of yoga. Yoga, what do you say? Hey, guess what? Mind, stop thinking. I want your heart to start talking about. Now, inductive speculation is anchored in experience. So when people talk about youth alone cannot do it. In Zoroastrianism, it is not women or men or youth. It is harmony in the community. Each has a role to play. So I do not buy this notion that, youth are going to do everything, we are going to let them do, etc. I think what we have to go back to is this notion of community, where each plays a role. So when the youth is young, they do certain things. When people get old like me, we empower the youth. Our role is to empower the youth. Our role is to make it happen, not guide the youth, not tell the youth what to do, things along those lines. So community building is extremely important. So for example, Rohinton Rivetta keeps talking about Hamazor. That is very much part of our tradition. And we should be thinking in terms of Hamazor and not men, not women, not youth, not old people, anything like that. It's a community that has to do things. Each is dependent on the other. The older people may have the wisdom, but do not have the energy to make it happen. The young people have the energy to challenge and question and things along those lines. So this is my contribution to it. And in fact, if you want to read about it, we have published a paper in a Springer book. So that's what I have to share with you.
Thank you, Farooq. We next have Conversations Across Borders, Jahangir Sarosh and Irma.
Good morning, and thank you very much to all the speakers. And before I forget, I appreciated what you just said, Farooq, and I would love to receive the documentation you have. If you can possibly send it to me, I'd like to reflect on it more. I have a few elements that I'd like to share with you. First of all, we need to share the teachings of Zarathustra. Each one of you has spoken with love and admiration at the teachings of Zarathustra. And I think that is important that the teaching is shared, because the aim is frashokharati. The other element is, I'd like to many years ago, when SDGs first came out, and I have been working in interfaith world for a long time, as you might know, I reminded people that the SDGs are nothing but our scriptures secularized. By that I mean put in a secular language for anybody and everybody to understand. With that in mind, I would request our educationalists, our priests, our community to look at the Gathas in a secular language, and reflect on the Gathas, not the additions that have been added later on, like the Vandidats and other elements of it. Zoroastrianism needs the total corpus of education within the community. However, for us to share it beyond, we need to be able to speak to people in a language that everybody is willing to listen to instead of saying, that's what they believe. Young people, I work with young people, and time and again I've heard the words, I am spiritual but not religious. The young people are in fact very religious, but they are concerned because the dogmas and rituals of our religions have not kept up with the science and modern philosophy, modern religion things. The important thing is that the young people wish to experience the divine. They want the mystery of the self and the joy of being. And when one has those elements or has a bit of experience of them, one is in a happy state. And as the teachings say, happiness, you've got to give happiness. And you can't give happiness if you haven't got it. Finally, I would also like our community to...
Good morning, Oklahoma, and good evening to our colleagues in India.
Sorry, you can't hear me? Okay. I think our community needs to recognize the sins of our community. If you look at what the Achaemenid Empire, our Persian Empire, did in some circumstances, and you read the scriptures, or rather the writings on the Beshtun, etc., you will see that we killed in the name of our religion, in the name of Druj. So we've got to admit and be honest to our young people that we have our community, when it had power, and this is the crux of it, when a community gets power, it moves away from the scriptures. The classic example is the Christian tradition was pacifist, but when Christians got power, they had to invent the aspect of just war. So let us look at ourselves within. Let us look at the Gathas as Zarathustra's teachings and separate them from the later contributions of priests and individuals. Secularize the Gathas so that we can explain them in a universal language without using the words Humta, Hukta, Varasha, etc. So that people then we have some opportunity to bring about fraternity, because just 150,000 of us, or whatever the number is, although it's increasing, cannot. We've got to work with others, as it has been said time and time again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jangir. If there are any questions specifically for the speakers, this is the time to ask your questions. Just unmute yourself, address the speaker, and ask. Okay, in that case, I have one final question, and I'd like to bring in each of the speakers or those who would like to share. What is your takeaway message, finally? The one thing we need to build better education. One thing. Shernaz, Coomi?
The one thing I would say very strongly, I believe in this very strongly, is to create connection cultures. to work collaboratively. We are all doing amazing things. Just see this forum. We don't have too many people here, but each one has something precious to give. So instead of working in isolation, we now really need to get together to make a change. This is my humble thinking. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Coomi. You said exactly what I was going to say. Let's have less competition and more collaboration.
Absolutely.
With students, especially. I mean, the crazy culture of today, from nursery, they're sent to 5 different classes across town and they're exhausted at the end of the day. That's not healthy at all. We need more collaboration. Thank you.
Mami, any final words that you think are important for education? Any final thought on education? What's important?
Empower
To empower whom?
the youth.
Okay, so now,
And to start with, you empower the children first with their confidence and their
okay, so confidence and self-esteem.
self-esteem.
I suppose seeing the confidence and self-esteem growing in each one and helping each youth to be builders of that in others could be one of the things we could work upon. So please be in touch with us at the Good Mind Nurturing Nature as we build this collaborative energy forward. We thank Yazdi Thatra and Zoroastrians.net for putting this recording on YouTube and sharing it with people around the world. Thank you, Shernaz. Thank you, Coomi, and thank you, Jerou Rammohan, for sharing your thoughts today.
It was personally enriching. Thank you.
Thanks
To everyone. Thanks to everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Yazdi, so much. Thank you.
If anybody would like now to share their thoughts before the recording stops, please feel free to do so. We'll then stop the recording, and then if you want to share thoughts off the recording, you'll be free to do that also. Thank you, Yazdi. Do stop the recording, please. But don't end the session.
Thank you.
Who is this?